Hello friends, it's Sharon from Mad Paper Crush. I am still at home, coming to you with another video. I hope that you are safe and well. If you would, leave a comment down below and let me know wherever you're from, what your stay-at-home order is. So like for me, I'm in Pennsylvania, and right now our stay-at-home goes until May 8th, until they are thinking about trying to open up the state, some of the different businesses that they have sort of denied being open and that kind of thing. But I'd be very interested to know, wherever you are, what's it looking like for you? How long are you going to be at home if you are, under a stay-at-home order? So I'd be interested to know. Anyway, the video today, we are going to be talking about metal stamping. And I use some metal stamping in some of the journals and different things that I do. And I had a request to kind of go over the things that I use and how I do the metal stamping that I do. So that's what today's video is going to be all about. We're going to talk about some metal stamping. We'll do a little bit of metal stamping, and let's get on with it. So first things first, I am not an expert, so I am just telling you what I either am working with right now or what I have worked with in the past and how it has worked for me in the past. So this is strictly a from my opinion or from my perspective kind of video. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the blanks that I use. So right now, I do mostly like using ones that are brass colored. So these are kind of an antique brass, and let me just move these off. So right now I have two different shapes that I have used so far. So these are the brass blanks that I'm using right now. They are rectangle in shape. I thought they would make good book plate sizes, and I think that they originally are made for like making jewelry or things like that, because they have these hooks or holes in them for you to be able to thread something through or something like that. I, of course, don't use them in that way, and I'll kind of go into some of the different things that I do with them as I'm using them. And these I will link down below because I know where I got them. So the other blanks that I have right now are these little guys, and they're silver. Let me move these off. And they are, I believe they're aluminum, because they are very, very soft. So the types of punches that I have for these, you have to be real careful with them because the metal is so much softer. And for example, my brass ones are very hard. So some of the stamps I have don't work very well in these because this metal is so hard. So that's another thing that you want to take into consideration when you're doing stamping, is just kind of knowing maybe what your stamps are rated for. If they're rated for different kinds of metal, they'll work better or not for those. All right, let's talk about tools. So one of the things that I definitely recommend having is some sort of anvil, some sort of block to punch on, so that you don't, bang into a softer surface. So this one is a very hard, very heavy anvil. I will link to, I actually did some jewelry making, and that's what this one is from, but I will link to either this one, if it's still available, or something similar down below so that you can see what I use there. But this is great because it's very hard, and when I stamp on the metal, I know that it's not going to make the blank bend or anything like that, besides the bending from the actual punching that I do. So you want to have a good bench block to work with there. And then also my hammer. So this is just your regular everyday hammer. It's nothing special, and that's what I use for this. And then also there's definitely a series of different pliers and things that I use for different things. So for example, let me just move these off of here so I can show you. So for this type of blank, oftentimes I will like to cut off that loop that's at the top because I just want the rectangle. So what I will do is I will use these Craftsman pliers. They're cutting pliers. So I can just line this up, and they're straight right across the top there. And then I can just line this up and give it a snip. So then I have my rectangle separate from my loop there, and I don't need to worry about having it on there. So that's what I use that one for. And then I also have these kind of bent nose pliers, but when you open them up, there's no ridges here. So I have other pliers that have ridges on them for grabbing things. And these are flat on here. And I like to use these because oftentimes, let me see if I can find one. Oftentimes these blanks will be a little bit bent. So I'm not sure if you can see that this is kind of bent, but sometimes I will use these pliers to kind of straighten things out, make them a little flatter. And if you use the pliers with the lines on them, they can make indentations on your blank. So I like to use the one that is flat on the inside, and then I can just kind of, you know, move these around a little bit to get that into a better flat shape there. So you can see how I kind of wiggled that a little bit. And then another thing that I also use is just a regular pair of tweezers. These are long tweezers, but they're also good for straightening out little pieces if you need to do that. So you don't necessarily have to have pliers. I like these because they're a little bit bigger, but you could probably do the same thing with these. And sometimes, you know, or even on the smaller ones, you can use these to do that with as well. And then this tool, this is a Euro punch, and I will link this down below as well. I love this punch because it actually punches holes. So for these rectangle blanks, I often like to have them have a hole on each side so I can put a brad in there or something like that. And so being able to punch another hole, so right now this has one hole in it, but I can take this and put another hole if I line it up to make it about the same there. This very quickly and easily makes a nice little hole in this blank for me so that I have one on both sides. And I think this one is a little bit bigger than the hole that's there. So often what I'll do is I'll just re-punch the original hole so that they do match in size. But, you know, certainly you don't need to do that. But then I can put a small piece of string through there, or even, you know, I can fold a ribbon or something and put it through there. But I have a hole on each side, you know, to be able to put it on as a book plate or something like that. So that's what I use those for. And then the only other tool that I use very often is washi tape. So when I'm punching, I like to be sure that my blank stays in place. And that's what I use the washi tape for. So I just take a little bit of washi and just place it down on my blank before I punch so that I know that my blank won't move around on my bench block. Now let's talk a little bit about punches. And I will tell you, I do not have that many punches. I got this letter and number set a long time ago. I don't even remember when I got it. It's been so long, and it is just basic letters and basic numbers, and I think that's it. And there's an ampersand. That's the only sort of punctuation that you have there. So, but I use this a lot. For this size blank, these size punches work great for, you know, putting a word in or adding some numbers. I often like to have a blank with just some numbers on it, maybe even a date or just some random numbers to make it look like some sort of old classification or something like that. And these work perfect for that because they are very plain. Now, I will tell you there is a lot of different stamps that you could get out there, different fonts that you can use that are, you know, these are all capital letters. You could get fonts that have lowercase. You could get fonts that are cursive or cursive-like. They're more script than these. These are, you know, block letters. These kind of look like an old typewriter or something, and I think that's probably why I like them. But this is all I have. And these were not made for crafters. I think these were made for, you know, they're hardware kind of things. So they are very solid, very strong. They work well on my brass, which is a harder metal, and I need to have that. So the only other punches that I currently have right now are these Impress Art punches. and they are made for crafters. So these are actually, one is a dragonfly and one is, I believe, a sun. I don't believe it, I know it. There's a sun on this one. So these, I love these stamps because I love having the fun designs on them. That, you know, they're not just letters and numbers and things like that. But I will say that these do not work well on my brass stamps. They are just not hard enough for them to work. Now, maybe if I used a different hammer or something like that, it might work, but I have not found that these work well on my brass stamps. But they work very well on the aluminum ones, which is a lot softer metal. So let me see if I can hold up here just a couple that I had done before. And this one, so you can see this one, I have the sun on there, and you can see it very nicely. And same for this one. This one has the dragonfly on there, but I also did some numbers on there from my original set, and you can see them very well as well. Now, I will say, I don't know how well we'll be able to see it, but the back of my aluminum one, you should hopefully can see here that the O, the 0 that I punched, almost like you can almost see it very well on the back side of this punch because I punched too hard on there. So that's the thing about these aluminum blanks, because they are a little bit lighter, a little bit softer. If you're really whacking that hammer, you could really punch, you know, too much in here. I did have to kind of flatten this one out after the fact because it was really dented. When I punch on these blanks, I'm used to really whacking it because this metal is so much harder. And, you know, so if you're using two different kinds of metals, you need to, you know, temper yourself. Think about which metal you're punching on so that, you know, you don't make a mistake punching too hard on one that is a soft metal. Okay, so let's do a little stamping. So I'm going to use this rectangular blank, the brass blank that I had cut the loop, the top loop off of. So before I stamp anything, as I kind of just rub my finger over it, I'm noticing that it's a little bit rough. So one other tool that I may use is a file. Now you can use a nail file on here, but I find that something a little bit sturdier is probably better. So if you have a metal file, that's great. You might want to look into something to file these down if you're going to do some metal stamping. So I didn't mention these during my tools and probably should have, but like here's something you could use. Now this is probably way too heavy duty for this, but it would definitely work for me to at least just get that burr off of there so that it doesn't stick out. So you would just take some time with that if you wanted to. But I also have this little set of files that is a little bit better for, you know, what I'm going to be doing here. So I'm just going to take one of them out and just make sure I file that down a little bit. And once again, this metal is pretty tough, so it may take a little bit of time for me to actually get that off. But you just want to keep filing it a little bit and then feeling it to make sure that it's not, you know, doesn't have that edge on it and won't hurt you. So that's pretty good. All right, so let me put my files away. And then we're going to punch. So I want to punch the word notes onto this. I think that would be nice. Now I could just start punching away if I wanted to, but because I want to be sure my blank stays in place, I'm going to use some of my washi tape to hold it down. So I'm just going to take a little piece of washi tape, and I'm going to probably put 2 pieces on and then move them around, because the one thing you do not want to do with the washi tape is punch over it. So actually, before I do this, so if you punch over the washi tape, it's actually going to push the tape down into the metal and it'll be very hard to get it out. So definitely don't punch over the tape. If you need to move it around as you're punching, I would definitely recommend doing that. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I'm going to tape, is I'm just going to take a pencil here and kind of mark where my center is, because once I put my tape over it, I'm going to have a hard time kind of seeing where my center mark is. So I just marked, this is blank is 1.5 inches long. So I just made a little pencil mark right there in the middle so that I know where my center point is. So now when I tape things down, I'll know where my center point is and I won't have things that are off. So when I put the word notes on, usually what I do when I'm punching, especially if I'm punching words, is I'll start in the middle and work my way out so that my word will be pretty centered on the blank itself. So notes is N-O-T-E-S, so 5 letters. So I'm going to start with the T, which would be my middle letter of the word, and then we'll work our way out punching the other letters. So let me find the T. This is a T. Now, most stamps, I will say, one thing I love about these stamps is that because the stamp has the symbol or whatever, you know, you're going to be stamping and impress art on there, I know which way to hold it so that it's right side up. Now, the sun obviously doesn't matter so much, but the dragonfly, you know, I'd want it to be a certain way so that it's right side up. And I know that if I hold my stamp with the words facing me, that my stamp will be right side up. These are not like that. And I have on more than one occasion stamped something sideways or whatever because they were perfectly square. So you kind of have to look at the stamp so that you know, okay, this is, you know, the right side up. And when I put it down, it's going to be the right way. So unfortunately, because these are, you know, sort of industrial type stamps, they're not so forgiving for you. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the stamp, put it right where I want it, and you can move your bench block around so that it is angled in such a way that you're comfortable. So if you're right-handed or left-handed, you may want to move your block a different way so that it's, you know, comfortable for you to do the punching. So I'm going to put my T down right where I want to stamp it. I'm going to hold it as secure as I can with my right hand. I'm left-handed. And then I'm going to give a couple of hard raps with my hammer onto the top of this. So obviously you want to be very careful that you are looking where you're going so that you don't hit yourself in the hand with your hammer. So I'm going to put the noise down, but I wanted to at least explain to you what I'm doing. Right before I do it, I'm just going to give this a couple hard raps and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we have our T. Now I could move my washi tape if I wanted to, but I don't need to at this point. So I just want to show you how it turned out. You can see my T there is looking lovely. And so now I'm going to start working my way out. So to the left, I want an O because we're writing the word notes. So this is one of the ones that I have to be careful with because a sideways O doesn't look right there. So I'm going to do my O next. And you will notice that, or you may not be able to see it yet, but my blank is starting to buckle just a little bit. So depending on how many punches you do, it may pull the ends of your blank up. So you do want to be careful about that. And I'll show you how to fix that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do my O next. I'm going to put it down where I want it. And I'm just trying to make sure that I space it, you know, far enough away that it's not touching the T there, but close enough that it still looks like it's part of the same word. And I am going to make sure that I am as centered as possible up and down on the blank. And then we'll do the same thing. Give it a couple of hard raps and we'll be done. Okay, and now you can see my blank has popped off of the bench block there because that punch pulled that end up for me. So this is why I like to tape them down, but we can fix this too. So you can see here, grab my notebook, you can see that my blank is bent a little bit. So all I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put this down like this, and I'm going to grab just some scrap fabric. Let me see if I have something close by. I'm just going to grab a little bit of scrap fabric here, something that I can just put over this because I don't want my hammer to make marks in my blank. So this is just some scrap fabric. Actually, I'm going to put it this way. And then I'm going to put this over. And then what I'll do is just very gently tap along the blank until you've got it pretty flattened out. Now, this one I need to do a little bit more. It's not quite perfectly flat yet. So I'll put that back under. And now we're pretty straight. So I would feel comfortable to start punching again. So now I'm going to reposition my tape on here. And we're going to go on the right side now for the E. So we're going to do N-O-T-E-S. I'm going to do the E. And we'll give it a couple of wraps here. Okay, it's getting there. And sometimes I notice that, you know, I think I did 5 hits on the O and 5 hits on the E. And if you see them, it looks like the O got more of an impression than the E. I don't know if that's the stamps that do that, or maybe I wasn't using, you know, the same pressure or whatever. But you know, that it is the way it is. So you'll notice I am starting to bow a little bit again. You could try to continue to stamp on this bent blank, but there's more of a chance that your punch will move and then you'll have a blurry number. So I like to try to make sure every time it bows up like that, I try to flatten it out as much as I can before I move on. Because I really want to have a nice flat surface for me to be able to punch on. Okay, so I'm going to do the notes now, and I want this tape on the left-hand side to be as far enough away so that I'm not going to punch the washi tape into my blank. So now N is a little harder. Let's see. N should go, I think, this way. I hope this is right. I don't want to get it upside down. I think this is right. Actually, I'm not even sure. An N might be the same upside down, but okay. Okay, we're bowed a little bit again because as you get closer to the edges will bend up a little bit easier. So you can see my first hit, I didn't quite hit it. I came down a little bit on my thumb, so I think my punch moved, and so you can see it's a little bit lower. Now, I will say I like that kind of thing because I think it makes it look more sort of vintage and authentic. That's just me. So you could start over if you didn't like that, but I'm gonna go with it. Okay, one last letter. We're going to do our S, and then this one will be done. Let me find the S. And let's go ahead and finish this one off. Okay, all done. We are still not exactly flat. So my last step here is just going to be to make sure this is flattened out. And even you may have noticed that if it's not quite there, I will give it a couple careful hits on hammer to blank here just to finish it off. So now you can see there is our little metal punch. Okay, the process for punching on the aluminum blanks, which remember we talked about are a little bit softer. You can almost feel the difference when you hold these pieces. These are way lighter, and so they're going to take a punch much quicker than the brass ones will. So, you know, I kind of hit harder and more hits when I'm doing the brass blanks than I would with something like this. But the process is very much the same. So I still want to tape something down, and I still want to be sure that that tape does not get in the way of where I'm punching. So I'm going to use one of these punches this time just to kind of give you an idea of something different that you can do. So once I have it taped down, like I said, this one, because the Impress Art wording is here, I know to hold that towards me, and that's going to be the way I can get an impression that's right side up. Now I know that my loop for this circle piece is right at the top there, and I'm going to I don't want to punch this dragonfly exactly straight up and down, so I'm just going to do it on a little bit of an angle just because I think that would be fun. So same thing, I'm going to hold it down. I'm going to hold it very securely, and then we're going to give this a couple of wraps with the hammer as well. Okay, and as you can see there, it went in nicely. And I did hit this pretty hard because these stamps are made, I think, for this type of metal. You have to kind of hit them hard. And the same thing is true if you're trying to flatten it out. So I'm going to grab my fabric again and just put that over there and just very carefully punch that out a little bit to flatten it back out again. But you certainly, you know, don't have to do that if you wanted to have a little bit of a variety on there. Now, there is also a lot of ways that people finish these off. I don't have the tools to do those kinds of things. So you can see here, I added a little bit of black patina to this and this one, but it's not what is normally called for. I use this solid marker. So this is a solid marker paint. It's solidified paint. And I then will put this all over the impression that I made, and then I'll use a baby wipe to wipe it off. So I'm going to grab a baby wipe here, and we'll do that real quick just to show you how I would do that. But there's enamel pens. Impress Art has a lot of specific tools that you can use for embellishing your stamps after, you know, you're done. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this solid pen, and actually I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm just going to just push it down into the stamp, and it's going to kind of get all over, and I want that because the solid marker will want to kind of go down on the higher parts of the stamp, so you really want to get it down in there. And I think sometimes it's hard to tell based on my light here, but I think I got down into all of the nooks and crannies in there. So now I'm just going to take this. Let me see if I can do this so you can see I have it covered pretty well. And then I'm just going to take my baby wipe and work off the areas that are on the flat part. So you can kind of see it's wearing away here. And I'm probably going to end up with messy hands, but that's okay. Okay, so now you can see, once again, grab my postcard here. So now you can see, let me just check here, make sure I did an okay job. I still probably need a little bit of cleanup there, but you can see now how using that black paint in the recesses of the stamp sort of makes it pop a little bit more, which is what you want sometimes. So I did not do anything on my notes one, but on the brass, I kind of like the way that looks. I kind of like that it's a little bit more subdued on those kinds of stamps, but certainly that is definitely a personal preference on how you would like to do your own stamp. So I think that you can also use Sharpie markers and alcohol. I find that, you know, doing this one, well, first of all, I don't have that much alcohol in my house, and right now it's hard to find any at all. So I'm not using the alcohol that I have for, doing these crafting things right now. But you could use a Sharpie marker just to color something in, and then take alcohol to rub off the parts of the Sharpie that are not embedded into, and get a very similar look here. So that is what I would do to patina my stamps. All right, friends, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this little video on tips for metal stamping. I hope that if you like this video, you'll give it a thumbs up, and I will see you same time, same place next week for another video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, friends, and I will see you next time. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye, friends.